At KMK and Partners. So the topic of the presentation is the power of silence. Karen, welcome on stage.
Thank you. And it works. Hopefully we will have no sound issues on this one. Actually, I would say usually I do these things in Russian, but I was asked to do this in English today, which is perfectly okay with me. But if to say a little bit about myself, next... Oh, I need a clicker. Do I have the clicker? Okay, let's see. And it works. So, a little bit about myself. I'm born in Denmark, but I live here in Ukraine since 2007. I started learning Russian probably before most of you were born, at least looking at the audience right now. Back in, what was it, about 6 years ago, I decided to try my luck somewhere else. I packed my bags and left Ukraine, went to UK to do an MBA, found out after a couple of months, well, the MBA was not a mistake, but leaving Ukraine was a mistake. So I came home, as I call my Ukraine now. So Denmark is my native country, but Ukraine is my home. I'm probably more nationalistic, patriotic than many Ukrainians, so pardon me for that. I have worked in many different places. I've worked in Mongolia with marketing. I've worked with agriculture in Australia and Denmark. I have worked with IT, mainly in Ukraine. And I've also worked with agriculture, both in Australia and Denmark. So a little bit of this, a little bit of that. My specialty is change management, and as we are in, let's say, an IT audience, not IT change management, people change management, so the human side of change, as we call it. And what I'm mostly focusing on is, obviously, because my background, the cross-cultural barriers, the cross-cultural communication, but also the team coaching. I think coaching of individuals, you need to be a pretty good shrink to do that. I'm not, so that's why I'm staying away from that. I believe in synergies across teams and getting management teams to function better together. That's one of the things I'm actually doing on a current project that I'm working on in Odessa. And I speak 7 languages. Как я сказала, обычно я делаю вот эти выступления на русском, так что если вам более удобно, со мной на русском разговаривать, пожалуйста. Але українська мова у мене не дуже, але якщо бажаєте, будь ласка. The other 4, well, obviously English, German, Swedish and Norwegian. And I grew up with 3 different kinds of Danish because my mother's from the west and my father's from the north, and we have our dialect, and I also speak what I call TV Danish. So I would like to start with a little test. So before we switch on this video, just in a second, I just want you to have one question in the back of your heads. What do you hear? So with that question, can we have the video on, please, the first one? So you have now been quiet for a few minutes and you are listening to this. What did you hear? The sound of silence, yes. Very original answer. In Danish we would say, as you ask, you get the question, the answer back. That's for that one. So what else did you hear apart from the sound of silence? What did you notice? What did you see? What is your takeaway from this song? Sorry? So you checked out what was the original version, yeah? The Simon and Garfunkel one from the 1960s, true. Yeah. What else? Darkness, yeah. Hope. Okay, interesting, yeah. What else? Struggle, feelings. Yeah. Sorry? Drama, yeah. I wouldn't go down a dark alley where he was standing, that's for sure. You're onto the right thing. Because the feelings is in the words, but it's also in what he's not saying. the power of his face, the power of the song, the building up to the crescendo, you're listening to what is being communicated, not just by the words. And that's the point that I want to go to. Many of you want to, the Hope one, that was an interesting one. I didn't see that one myself. Because I was listening to the pain, to the struggle, being alone, being cold. Sorry? Inner fight, yeah. So again, feeds into the drama. But the hope, I'll remember that one for next time. Thank you for that. The perfect solution doesn't exist. Oh, now we're all depressed again, right? We just came from hope and now we're all depressed. But after all, as we are talking about customers and how to sell and whatever today, we have to look for the pain that our customers are facing. Because if we identify where their pain is, we will know where is our blue ocean. For those of you who read Blue Ocean, these two guys are the ones who wrote the strategy, very renowned professors at INSEAD. But how do we find out what is the pain that our customers are facing? They are constantly being hassled in the external world, but they are also facing hassles in your companies where you are working. You don't think so? I will prove you wrong. You think you know them all? You're also wrong. Sorry to keep you in the depressed stage right now. But this hassle map is actually is developed by a professor called Adrian Slivotsky. He's actually teaching at the Lviv Business School. This is not his figure, it is me trying to be clever to illustrate, so that it becomes more obvious what we're talking about. But if you look at the sales process and let's say the whole cycle, it's straight from the first encounter with the customer. The previous lectures today have been going into much more detail about that. I'm not going to teach you. I'm not a salesperson. But all the way through the journey that the customer is progressing through your company, he's interacting with people, he's interacting with roles, and there are some pain points. I am dead sure about it. I'm not talking about, let's say, looking into the processes. I'm talking about taking a step back from everything and putting on the hat that says, customer. If I have my customer hat on, how would I feel coming into your company? Am I being greeted in a nice way? Do I get the answers to the questions at the time where I would like to get the answers? Do I feel that my supplier actually understands what I'm looking for? There was a picture earlier today about the drill and the hole. Like, what is it, in fact, I as a customer would like to have? Only by stepping out of your, let's say, comfort zone, which is your own company, and stepping into the customer's comfort zone, which is your external environment, you can try to figure out what is actually the issues, or what are the issues that I'm a customer, I'm facing. To illustrate, I am using 2 banks in Ukraine. Both of them, I think, are foreign. Not that it really matters. There I have, let's say, 2 very different impressions of these 2 banks. Raiffeisen, Austrian, I believe. It's very simple, I would say, to get in contact with them over the phone. I'm old school. I use the phone still. So when I call up Raiffeisen, I'm getting this person automated, recorded message. We're not talking any AI here. They are very stable, conservative. But I'm getting the question, do you want this, this, or this? Press 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay, that's simple. Even I can figure that one out. And by the end of it, I get to where I would like to go. Simple, easy, no hassle. OTP Bank. When I call up OTP Bank, I get a very nice lady, Lesia. Lesia and I, we have a, let's say, complicated relationship. Lesia is very polite. She's always very polite. You know, Добрий день, мене звати Lesia, як можу вам допомогти? Okay, that's a nice start. I have never spoken English to her. I haven't dared to try that. But I speak in Russian. And it depends on whatever service I want. Then Lesia interprets what it is that I would like to get to. She's not always getting it right. So I have had to hang up on Lesia a few times. I'm very impolite. I'm getting a little bit impatient sometimes. And now, was it a week ago? Now I'm going to try and be clever. See if Lesia can understand me this time. So after Добрый день, меня зовут Lesia, and so on, I'm saying, я хочу поговорить с сотрудником банка. Relatively simple sentence, right? But Lesia has become very clever. She is saying, я розумію, ви бажаєте розмовляти з співробітником банка. And then she continues something about, what would you like to talk to the person about? Damn, we are back to square one again. And I had to hang up on Lesia again. Eventually, I got through to a person, a human in the other end, and I got my business sorted out. And to be honest, Lesia and I, we really don't get along. And honestly, I would rather work with Raiffeisen than OTP because of that experience. I'm pretty sure they have some very clever CTOs, both in Raiffeisen and in OTP, but they attack this task of interaction with the customer in two very different ways. Hassle-wise, I think the OTP CTO was really trying to be clever. Yeah, we have this new technology, let's use the bot, and it's all going to work really clever. But you're setting the expectation that you're sort of impersonating this human, which is then, совсем. So they're actually getting the adverse reaction to what they want. At least they've got one unhappy customer. Of course, I don't have millions. I'm not Akhmetov. Probably doesn't have money in a OCP anyway. But honestly, food for thought is like, we want to try and be clever, that's fine, but use technology with a bit of human touch. So that, let's say, dinosaurs like me, who like to call people on the phone, are not getting a complicated relationship with a bot. And I guess, bottom line is, who would you rather work with? If you have the opportunity to compare, I know, for instance, if we go to, let's say, mobile phones, I'm pretty sure none of you have only one. It's like Vodafone goes for this, and Kyivstar goes for that one, and maybe a third one just as a backup. But I'm pretty sure you have a preferred vendor for whatever service it is that you would like to have. Again, just a food for thought for the next time when you want to call OTP and have a chat with Lesia. But what is the right language? Now, obviously, given my, let's say, linguistic background, that is a special topic that I find very interesting. But the Tower of Babel, I'm pretty sure you all know the story. And way back when people thought they were being really smart and they want to build that bloody tower all the way up to the old man upstairs, no, I don't want that to happen. So he threw his Harry Potter wand over us and we started speaking different languages. And since then it has been a bloody mess in the whole world. We can just see where we are getting today. We don't mention any countries. But again, the right language, picking the right language. You think you have the right language. That's all good. For instance, I know I'm pretty good in Russian. I know my Ukrainian stinks, but I just have to live with it. I'm setting expectations from the beginning here. But being Danish, I have very often been categorized as Scandinavian. I don't mind. I don't have let's say, that many prejudice against Swedes and Norwegians. We call Norwegians mountain monkeys, by the way. I don't think there are Norwegians in the room. On the other hand, the Norwegians, they're always saying if there's a helicopter coming up to the mountains during the skiing season, it's a Dane who's been trying to be clever skiing down the hill. To illustrate the relationship between the Scandinavian countries, I would say probably use a football metaphor. From the Danish side, we still remember 1992 when we became European champions. That is, you can count how many years ago. The Swedes used to be the ones that are really good at football. We really want to kick their butt. It's like we're going back to the war again, you know, fighting the Swedes. And if we beat them, we're really, really happy about it. Norwegians, it's sort of, yeah, it's like the kid brother. Sometimes we let him win, sometimes he doesn't, you know. So that's a little bit more simple, I would say. But how we are seen from the outside is like the Scandinavian model. It's like, I think, no, they actually started recognizing Denmark in the US election campaign, where we like go to Denmark, and all of a sudden we were very, very popular on CNN and BBC and whatever have you. And all of a sudden they discovered, oh, there is that little thing on top of Germany. It's not the capital of Sweden. So again, the devil is in the detail. I know I'm making fun around this, but you know, usually I find it annoying that people tend to think that my language is German. I also find it annoying that to get sometimes a question like, do you have polar bears in the street? Well, yeah, Greenland is technically part of the Danish kingdom, but they are sort of up there very, very far away. And they're also much bigger, by the way. So really pay attention to the detail, the customer journey, the hassle map. There can be things which really, to you guys, internally looks like, well, what's the issue with that? But that might be, you know, a very, very important detail for your customer. To give you an example, actually from the project I'm working on at the moment, they updated the internal system. It's a maritime service company, global company, 30 countries around the world, and I don't know how many thousands of people. So they are basically outstaffing seafarers. So when you're sitting and searching for a seafarer, you can call him an IT guy if it makes it easier. But when they're sitting and looking for a seafarer, which they have to do like several times a day, then if they want to make a new search, they need to close down the window and open it again. Do you think people find that funny? If they have to find, let's say, 30 people to go on a vessel in 1 week, and you have to close down, up again, close, up. It's like, where was the IT department thinking when they were doing that? But again, devil is in the detail. Okay, that one was not supposed to look like that. Okay, I'll talk around that. It was how it was supposed to look, this presentation slide here, was that the purpose should be in the middle, because in order to communicate, you also need to figure out what is that you want to achieve. There are, how to put it, if you are clear on what you want the other person to have at the end of the conversation, then it becomes much easier for you to find out, okay, how to actually get there. So first you need to figure out what is the purpose of the communication you are now conveying to your customer. Is it that you want to inform him about something? Is it that you want to explain something? Do you just want to entertain, as I'm trying to do right now? Failing or not, we don't know. We'll see at the end of this. But at the end of it, if I am scoping my communication in the right way, knowing where I want to end up, there is a pretty fair chance that I will actually end up being straight on with my customer, and he will start believing that what I say is actually what I'm going to do. As I'm writing here, walk the talk. So be very careful about the wording that you are using, because if you're saying, I'm going to look into this, you're saying, I will look into it. But if you're saying, I promise you that we will do this, you are setting the expectation bar a lot higher than that. So especially for us as foreigners that are communicating in a non-native language, It's very important to pay attention to the details of what are the words you're actually using, so that, let's say, another example, speaking to English people, if you, or native speakers, let me say, if you are suggesting something, you're actually giving them an order. Because for them, a suggestion is, okay, I'm going to do that. Whereas for a Dane, suggestion is just suggestion. It's just an idea. How hard can it be? You know, take it or leave it. You don't have to do it. But as a Dane, I can be, let's say, perceived as being pretty blunt from a native English speaker. A small trick that I have learned over the years is that if I'm getting a message from a native English speaker, which is absolutely rubbish, doesn't make any kind of sense, instead of saying, I don't understand, which is the straightforward answer, it's saying, it's unclear to me what you're saying. I don't know if you feel the difference. Because if you're saying, I don't understand, I'm saying, I'm an idiot. You're pretty smart, but I'm an idiot. Whereas if you're saying, it's unclear to me, I'm saying, well, you're an idiot because you explained it I didn't get. Small differences. But again, you're communicating the same thing, but you're saying it in different ways. And it's, again, sorry for repeating myself, but the devil's in the detail. So I had a QA manager, what was that, 6 years ago? I was managing a software team. On our Monday stand-up calls with the Danish guys, Sergei was always starting with, I didn't do this, this, and this. You're really not doing yourself a favor starting a conversation like that, to be honest. Especially not when you're talking with the development director in Denmark, who has other expectations, right? So by switching 180 degrees and saying, Sergei, you have done this, this, and this, that is in progress, and you expect it so and so. Turn the conversation around. So again, be aware of how you're saying things. And if you don't feel confident in English, that's perfectly fine. Because we are the ones who have learned a foreign language. Just ask them to start learning Ukrainian or Russian. And you're just like, okay, now we can get back to business. But bottom line is, how good are you at decoding what is being said to you? Because one thing is that we have to be aware of how we are sending the message. But what we are receiving, we interpret. If we can switch to the video. This video will hopefully give you a bit of inspiration as for that. You're absolutely right. No, here it comes.
You might be a star negotiator in your own country, but in today's global economy, your skills may not automatically translate to other cultures. For instance, in some cultures, it's entirely appropriate to show emotion during a negotiation, to raise your voice, laugh passionately, or even put a friendly arm around your counterpart. In others, this much expression not only feels intrusive or surprising, but may be viewed as immature or unprofessional. Then there's open disagreement. Negotiators often assume that more expressive cultures are also more confrontational, but that isn't always the case. In some countries, such as France and Israel, emotions pour out, including disagreement. But for other very expressive cultures, such as Brazil, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia, open disagreement could be seen as insulting. Some less expressive cultures, such as Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands, see open disagreement and debate as positive and necessary, as long as it's expressed calmly and factually. Others tend to be both less emotional and non-confrontational, which means you'll have to be especially attuned to subtle cues for both positive and negative responses. It's also important to learn how others build trust. There are two distinct types, cognitive and affective. And in a business setting, the dominant type of trust varies from one culture to another. Cognitive trust is task-based. It comes from the head and is built on your counterpart's accomplishments, skills, and reliability. American culture offers a good example of this kind of trust. In the United States, getting too emotionally close to a business counterpart is seen as unprofessional, and mixing the personal and professional is seen as risky. Effective trust is relationship-based and comes from the heart. It arises from the feelings of emotional closeness, empathy, and friendship that are developed gradually through sharing meals, evening drinks, and coffee breaks. In China, for instance, negotiators are unlikely to trust their counterparts until an effective connection has been made. Adapting your negotiation approach accordingly will help you get to yes, or sí, ja, oui, hi, and da.
Itak. So it's always easy to, let's say, be aware of national cultural differences. But the extra dimension that I would like to draw your attention to also today is that when we are switching from different business spheres, and also when we are changing from different organizational cultures, let's say a startup to a big corporate, huge difference in how they do things. In a startup, let's say 5-10 people, maybe that would even start going in the corporate way, but everybody knows everybody, everybody's pitching in, it's teamwork, and we get things done, and everybody knows what's going on in the company. I don't think everybody in IBM knows what's going on in IBM. I don't think everybody knows what's going on in SAP. But the journey from a startup to a corporate has got many different stages, and depending on, let's say, it's not even just the size. You can meet, I was working in an 800 people IT company in Ukraine, which definitely had still a startup culture, and it wasn't working, trust me. But the journey is very important, and it hurts in a company when the changes are going on. But if you are aware of the fact that internally you are going on this journey with the company, thereby you can also having an awareness that, okay, my customer no longer understands that Ivan, who's sitting in sales, or Natasha, who sits in finance, well, there's now 10 people of them, so if he instead is directed to the financial controller, or let's say the sales manager, who I understood will not really be existing 5 or 10 years from now, that becomes simpler for the customer to understand where to go, but you need to also build the foundation internally in the company to make that easier to navigate. But that being said, you can never, ever underestimate the personal contact. Just remember me and Lesia. Demanding new customer or demanding customers, they are at first glance really a pain in the butt. But you can actually take something from them. You can learn something from them. If you're really, let's say, opening your mind in your more, let's say, tranquil moments where you have the patience to actually analyze this really annoying customer. Because again, listening to what he's not saying, listening to what is being said between the lines, you can actually discover opportunities. It's, again, as an example, what is that, quite a decade ago, I was working in a company that some of you know, called Cyclum. I was admin director back at the time, and we were moving into a new corporate headquarters, moving in 450 people. It was an interesting experience. I actually have one of my old teammates here today, so we achieved quite a lot back in those days. Anyway, that was not the point. The point was that working around the clock during my ski prazniki, IT department was not happy with me that I put it at that time. But anyway, working around the clock, had about an hour at home, back to the office, opening up for 300 people. The first day, I was like, yes, people were happy, they were smiling, and then came my good friend Ivan, who works at that time in the Cyclum sales department. Well, I think he did give me a couple of days, but then I got a very long email. It was a very long email about the things that weren't working and the things that were not in place and that should be done. You can imagine I was not really happy with that email because, you know, I've been working around the clock. My team has been working around the clock. Damn it, we made this 3,500 square meter office a success from day one. What's your problem? Thankfully, Ivan is a good friend. He still is. Let's just say Ivan. Right. I went to him because I am a big believer in interpersonal communication, and this email tyranny that you have in some companies, I'm not a big fan of that. So we had a good chat about things after I had calmed down. And he finally actually achieved his goal after, I don't know how much time, it's so long in the past now. But I understood where he was coming from, because he was thinking of all the little details that I had missed in the bigger picture. All the things which would make it easier for the customers, and here I'm talking also about the internal customers, meaning the rest of the company. And it was actually a great help, because that email with this, I don't know, 30 points or something, I printed out, we weren't that conscious of the environment back then, printed out, it became my checklist. And I could say, okay, this needs to be done, this I could delegate to that person, and so on and so. And I think within a couple of weeks, we had it fixed. Tremendous help. Teamwork. But again, if I hadn't been, well, I wasn't open to him in the beginning, trust me. But again, as I said, after coming down and taking it for what it was, which was actually a help, the end result actually became a lot better. And that is where, you know, the initial, let's say, defense reaction, like speak to the hand, which I have encountered in some Ukrainian, let's say, service organizations, not necessarily in IT, but if you go into a restaurant or something, you're like, okay, do you even want customers in this place with that attitude? But that being said, should we always accept criticism? They are right, I'm sorry, you shouldn't. He's wrong.
Maybe you shouldn't respond to it, that's my point. I don't know.
Okay, fair point. It's all in the wording. Well done. We should always be aware of how we are taking criticism. For me, I would say I was very sensitive back in the day. I had my first job after graduating from business school. I was working in a law firm. And I had, well, I still have, an authorization as a state-certified translator of Russian. So that means that if I, let's say, translate a document from Danish into Russian, or vice versa, and I put my stamp on it, you can actually use that document in Danish court. My boss was a lawyer, or is a lawyer. And he had done Russian language courses in the army. He'd also been to Moscow, and he was pretty good in Russian. I would say he was always doing the translation, and I was typing it like the good little secretary I was back in those days. But what he didn't know that I did was that I would take up the Russian original, and having his voice in my ears, I would be typing and I would be reading the Russian one, and if I heard something that I didn't feel was right, I'd just change the Danish text. Teamwork, he never found out. The result was better at the end. And that's, you know, there's always a choice. Like, do you openly confront the criticism? Do you openly take the discussion that is needed? Or can you let it go and still achieve your goal the other way, in another way? So again, feeding back to the video that I showed, it all depends on the cultural context. Whether it is national, whether it is organizational, or even something as simple as man and woman, right? I'm not going to go further into that one. The final point, like always say yes to new business. I guess as a startup in particular, that one's really, really hard. Because you really want business, you really want to get going, and you think you've got a great product or great service. But if you, let's say, start doing a customized solution for every single customer you onboard, what do you think is going to happen when you've got 10 customers or 20 customers? You're going to have 10 or 20 different solutions on how to deliver your service. And just a rhetorical question, how are you going to scale that business? It's going to be really, really hard. But catching the tipping point when you need to switch from a customized delivery solution to a generic solution, that one is hard. The project I'm working on right now, as I said, there's 30 countries involved, and I think the employees is about 3,000. It's hurting big time in that organization to do a transformation from customized delivery to a generic solution that covers the global one. It hurts. It really does. But again, feeding back to what we started with, the customer journey, if you are at least aware of how does the journey look like, then it will make it easier for you to see how can my new customer and new business feed into that journey so I can still have, let's say, a generic product which I can twist and twinkle a little bit for each and different customer so he will feel personal and he will feel very special, because that's what we're all going to go back to. Or not going to go back to, going to go forward to. So summing up, I see some of you are getting tired. Listen to understand, not to answer. I cannot emphasize that enough. When people start talking, listen to what they're saying. Don't start thinking about what you're going to answer at the end until they're done talking, because you might actually miss the point. And I do know that I'm sounding very patronizing right now. Beware of your own biases, your own prejudice. There are people that I am not particularly fond of on a personal level, but I am, well, not currently. There was a situation in the past, so I can use that one. But because we were colleagues, because she was heading a function which I was very depending on, I found a way to work with her. Keep it professional. But beware that you're not letting your emotions or your prejudice influence on how you're going to actually carry out your job. Walk the talk. Don't promise anything if you're not going to deliver. And that doesn't just go for the sales function, because if you are going out, you've got a back office behind you which needs to deliver that service. And if you're promising something, which, pardon me, the back office is going to screw up, you're going to have a very, very unhappy customer. Again, just as an example, back in the days of Cyclum, it really, really annoyed me when the sales department said, yeah, of course you can have 4 developers in Sweden for 3 months. The only thing was that these 4 developers, they were like 20-something and they had a blank passport, and I need to get like a multiple entry visa for 3 months. That was damn hard back in those days. Unfortunately, fortunately, I had a very, very good Swedish customer who went with me to the Swedish embassy, and we actually did manage to get those visas. Sales didn't see that we were bending over backwards to actually get it done. They just said, oh, they can deliver. That means we can promise it next time. So beware of what you're promising, because if you can deliver it, fine. But if you're depending on someone else to deliver what you're promising, then be careful. And the last one, lifelong learning. I can say that because I'm so much older than most of you. I'm still learning. And I have only recently found my purpose actually within the last year, where I started my own company and where I'm doing my bit to bring this country on her feet. And that is my purpose. That is, now I've finally seen that that is where I have been going towards all my life. So lifelong learning. Don't steer blindly towards your goal without checking your surroundings. Otherwise you'll end up as Titanic. Not a good place to be. It's cold down there. Thank you very much.
Questions? Thank you, Karen. Let's take a couple of questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question.
And remember, it's okay to speak Russian or Ukrainian.
Good points, actually. Any questions? Don't be shy. Oh, it's the power of silence. I think they got the point. All right. Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Отже,